Hey, what's up, and welcome back to the HK Rifle Works YouTube channel. So I'm sitting here getting ready to assemble my custom work Sig P320, and I thought it would be a really cool opportunity before I jumped into the tabletop, the testing and evaluation, etc., stuff like that, to kind of show you all a behind the scenes look and go over the parts I selected for this build. The nice thing about the P320 platform is it's so incredibly modular. You can build essentially anything from subcompact to full size and any mix and match that you'd like, due to the serialization of the fire control unit. So you can swap grips, anything that you like. So the modularity is really there. That's one thing that I really like about the 320 platform. So just kind of starting from the bottom to the top, I ended up going with a 17 round mag. This is a factory Sig mag. Also their 21 round mag. For the fire control unit, we're using their Custom Works fire control unit. It's supposed to be pretty solid from what Sig is putting out. Hopefully it lives up to it. For our white light, we're gonna run the X300 Ultra. The grip module, we're gonna be running a full-sized medium grip module here from Sig. I believe this is the Cary. And the Cerakote was done by a company called, I believe it's pronounced Fdezwerks, Fdezwerx. So it turned out pretty good. I'm happy with that. For the recoil assembly and guide rod, pardon the pointy pin here, we are going with the Sig 9mm, just their full-size guide rod and spring assembly. From what I've seen, this is kind of the go-to, but if I ever need to tune anything, I know there's a couple companies that make kits out there that will kind of tune your springs. I think they do like solid guide rods and spring combos that you can change the weights and spring rates on. So we'll see how the factory Sig works. I also went with it, just a heads up, because Sig recommends only using Sig products with their guns, and it will void your warranty if you don't use Sig products. Full disclosure, I haven't had the best luck with Sig products in the past in terms of reliability, so I really wanted to make sure that I used only Sig parts to start out with to see how everything works. Just in case I ran into some issues, maybe they can help me out and I wouldn't void my warranty. For the barrel, we are running the Sig, that's their full-size 5.5 inch barrel, obviously 9mm, and it's threaded 1/2 by 28. For our slide, I ended up going with the Procut slide. It looks pretty intriguing to me on the website, and I noticed that it has all the lightning cuts in it and everything like that. But the issue that I noticed, or I wouldn't even call it an issue. What I noticed is that even though the slide does have lightning cuts on it, it's still the same weight. I guess they left material in other places, so it's still the same weight as the factory slide. So technically the lightning cuts really don't lighten the slide. I guess the balance of the slide is a little bit different, but the lightning cuts don't really do any lightning. I guess they're just for aesthetics. So I'm curious to see how that runs. It looks pretty good. And last but not least, holster-wise, we are going to be running the A&R design. This is a outside the waistband light bearing for the X300, and it has a Safariland QLS fork on the back. So let's get this together real quick, and we will hit the tabletop, do a little first thoughts, and then in the next video we will go to we'll do the range testing and evaluation. Okay, so we got the 320 assembled, and it turned out pretty good. We had no hiccups, everything went together well, no problems at all, and I'm pretty pleased with the outcome. Now, if y'all have seen some of my previous videos, you know that I have a flux Raider as well, so I use some of these components to transfer over to the Raider, but I really wanted to give the 320 a shot as like a dedicated handgun and not in like a Raider chassis or something like that, or the MP17. Now, I have shot, goodness, I think I have probably shot and gotten sufficient time behind probably the majority of the striker-fired handguns on the market. I'm talking Glock, other SIGs, Smith & Wesson, Canik, HK, you name it. I feel like I've really branched out in the handguns, and the one handgun that fits my needs the best out of all of them, and kind of checks all the boxes that I need, is the FN509. And y'all have seen this on the channel before, but this is kind of the gold standard that I measure all other handguns against for my needs. And understand that your mileage may vary. You may pick up this handgun and it may feel awful to you, but for how my hands are, for my needs, everything like that. I haven't found a better handgun than this. And again, that's just my opinion. Again, your mileage may vary. When I compare other handguns, this is always the handgun that it gets compared against. So a quick start off is magazines. I always kind of like to start looking at the magazines when I am looking at handguns. And a magazine kind of can make or break a handgun or determine how well it functions based off the magazine. And just looking at these mags, fit and finish on these is awesome. The Sig mags, the 320 mags, they're marked made in Italy. They could be Mekar mags. I know Mekar is a OEM manufacturer for a lot of companies. One thing that I noticed on the magazines that I really, really like is the spacer. You know, say if you are running an extended magazine, the spacer right here is one piece with the base plate, right? So for example, the FN, and I know a lot of other companies do use this as well, but they use a floating spacer, meaning that the spacer and the base plate are separate from each other, right? And this has kind of given me a couple of problems in the past. You know, say you're running this magazine on your kit, on your belt, something like this, and the spacer may rotate. Like say it's like maybe an inch away, 1.5 inches, 2 inches away from the base plate, and you're going for, say, a magazine change. Sometimes when I'm doing an emergency reload and I'm fighting, I'll have to fight the base plate that is halfway up the magazine body. And sometimes I'll pinch my hands, sometimes it's a little bit harder to seat, so on and so forth. So if I can get away from a two-piece spacer and base plate, I 100% will, right? So that's one thing off the bat that I really, really do like about the Sig, is the one-piece base plate. So it works really well. I'm assuming there's going to be no feeding problems, everything like that. But just out of the gate, the magazines have looked really appealing to me. Moving on to the grip module, we'll start moving our way up. The grip module, again, like we said, this is the Cary grip module. I have felt Sig's smaller grip modules before. And I've also felt, obviously, they're mediums. This is a medium. But I think I'm right in the middle between a small and a medium. The small honestly feels like a child's grip module. Like if you have a younger shooter or something and you're teaching them to shoot handguns, I think the smaller kind of caters towards them. Or say you have somebody with like really, really small hands, or say your girlfriend or something like that, needs a little bit smaller grip. But the medium is pretty beefy, to be honest with you. The medium's a little big. It's kind of hard for me to reach some of the controls. I've noticed the slide lock lever, the magazine release. Say if I have a magazine in here, I kind of have to rotate. Say I build my grip, I kind of have to rotate the handgun in my firing hand or my dominant hand to reach the magazine release, and also the slide stop lever. Do everything I need to do administratively, any reloads, anything like that, and then I can rebuild my grip while I'm pressing the handgun back out and reacquiring my sight picture. So this may just be me, it may be super comfy for you, but the grip for me in medium is just a little bit too big. The buttons are in good places. The magazine release looks pretty good. I like the size of it. I like how far it protrudes. That's good. The slide lock lever is a little bit forward from my hands, but like I said, the grip, the angle from the beaver tail to the face of the trigger, that was a little bit smaller. I feel like the slide lock lever would be in a good spot for me. Getting to the, well, actually, first of all, like for example, like 509, I can have my firing grip and I can reach the magazine release and my slide lock lever. And the magazine release is a little bit more ovicular on the 509 than triangular on the 320. So just a heads up there. Again, it's all going to be boiled down to personal preference. Moving on to kind of the grip texture on this handgun. Again, we said this is I think it's the Cary model. But there is almost no grip on this thing. This thing is crazy slick. And this is just me, dry hands. I mean, I can rotate my hands around. My hand really doesn't grip to the handgun. I'm sure there's aftermarket grips and stuff, or like, you know, some people use like skateboard tape and stuff like that. But out of the gate, I really am a little disappointed in terms of how slick the grip is. I mean, think about it. I have been in cases where my hands have been wet, where my gun has been muddy, anything like that. And I have a feeling that if any of that happened, especially blood, I haven't had the opportunity to grip a handgun with my hands covered in blood, but I have felt blood in, I guess, larger volumes. And when that stuff gets on you, it has like the viscosity of oil. it's extremely slick. So I'm fearing if I were ever to use this handgun in any capacity and there were anything like mud or water, especially blood, this thing would be slipping left and right. Unlike the 509, it has, you know, 3 or 4 different grip textures and types, and it has opposing lugs and everything like that. So when I grip this handgun, the handgun stays put. Again, we said this is the Cary model, so you see, I don't know if this, I've heard of people complain if you have too aggressive of a grip and say you're carrying appendix or like in the small of your back, like 4 o'clock, something like that. The grip of the, I guess the grip texture can rub up against your skin and irritate it, but it's still, in my opinion, I think this is really, really light in terms of grip texture. But time will tell. Moving on from there, all of the geometry looks good. It looks like a pretty modern grip module. It's got a good rail. It's got a full-size rail. The undercut's really nice. The trigger guard is molded nicely. I can still see some of the molding nipples. So I wish that would have been cleaned up a little bit, where I guess they injection molded this grip module. But other than that, kind of the geometry and everything, it's modern, and I definitely like it. I think I'm just gonna have to get around some of the I guess learning curves or things that I don't necessarily prefer on it. One more thing that I noticed on this handgun with this grip module is the bore axis is extremely high on this. So if you can see this beaver tail here, getting the web of my hand really, really up in here, just looking down and building my sight picture, I can see the slide of the handgun is way, way over the web of my hand, and I can feel it as well. When I present this handgun, it doesn't have a dot on it as well. The delta point is on my radar, and maybe I'll swap it over for testing, but for right now, I can just feel the weight of the handgun, and kind of the center of balance or center of mass of this handgun is a good bit above my, the web of my hand. So I'm curious to see how much recoil it has, or muzzle flip. Again, we're talking about 9mm, so we aren't shooting anything crazy like 10mm or anything like that, but I think that maybe they could have gotten the bore axis potentially a little bit lower. We will see. Compared to like the 509, when I get the web of my hand up on the beaver tail there, it's pretty low to the web of my hand. It's just enough to where it won't give me slide bite, but again, the handgun feels really balanced, and the center of gravity feels a little bit lower in my hand and in line with my forearm compared to the Sig, which feels kind of top heavy, if you will. I wanted to give this trigger a shot and just kind of get my first thoughts in dry fire. Granted, when you're dry firing and live firing, I've noticed that there may be some flaws in the trigger that I felt dry firing that maybe don't appear in live fire, but take this as what you will. Pressing out, getting a good grip, prepping our finger, prepping our trigger. It has a little bit of take up. You hit a wall, the wall's a little mushy, and then break. Let's see how the reset is. The reset's pretty good. It's not super prominent, but you can feel it. So we'll do the same thing again. Take up the trigger, hit a wall, break. So it has a little take up, a little creep. The break is pretty good. It's not super defined, a little mushy break, and then the reset isn't extremely prominent, but you can feel it. One thing that I'll notice is the trigger isn't super heavy. It's probably around maybe a 4.5 pound trigger, maybe 5 pound, if I had to take a guess. Compare it to the 509, and this has an Apex kit in it, so this is upgraded from the factory version. And the 509 has definitely some take up, kind of that crunchiness. Just note this has that inertial drop safety in here. The Sig does not, so this kind of has the dingus in here. So we will present it and prep the trigger and then break. And that break on this handgun is really, really crisp. It's much crisper than the 320. However, it is measurably heavier, maybe by a pound, pound and a half. Cycle that, let's see the reset. The reset on this gun is a good bit shorter, and it may be about the same, but it's a lot more prominent. You can feel the trigger reset. So let me press one more time. Break. Reset. Yeah, so again, triggers are going to be personal preference, kind of what do you like. I definitely say the 509 with the Apex kit is more crisp, more pronounced, but it's just maybe a pound heavier than the 320. Not to say the 320 trigger is bad, just from dry firing. I like the feeling of the 509 better. I like the pull weight of the 320 better, if that makes any sense. So, and again, I guess it's their custom works. I guess you get a like a little custom serial number, flat face trigger, and I think it's like titanium nitride or something like that to give it the like lubricity and the FDE or kind of tan color. But kind of moving forward, again, we're running the Surefire X300. It works just fine in our holster. These are kind of my go-to holsters, these A&R Designs, with the QLS for it because I use a lot of Safariland products. But just looking at that, everything looks good. Kind of moving up to the slide here. Again, like we said, we're using the Procut slide. And in my opinion, I wish I kind of would have went with a more traditional slide, not necessarily the most flashy slide out there. Like we said, the lightning cuts are more aesthetic because it still is the same weight. They just did it for looks, I guess. They took off material here and left material elsewhere to have the same weight of the slide. I guess this makes sense when you're using your recoil springs and everything like that. Sig doesn't have to worry about different reciprocating masses, and they can just use the same guide rod and recoil spring, and it will kind of work across the board. But again, the slide looks pretty cool. I like it. Like I said, it's a little flashy, but I actually got a pretty good deal on it. It was the same price as the standard slide, so I just decided to go with a little bit nicer slide, nicer looking, if you will. So everything came pre-installed in the slide, all the internal components, everything like that. I've built a couple handguns as well. Like, I remember I was shooting Glocks, like when Roland Specials were popular, and putting those together and having striker channel, like liner tools and stuff like that. So it's nice that Sig offers an option that is kind of built all together. One thing that I wish they would do for a dedicated handgun, granted this doesn't matter because I'm using this on the Raider, but they include a cut for a Delta Point Pro and their Sig optics. They share the same footprint, but they don't include suppressor height sights. I guess a lot of their factory Sig handguns or factory 320s don't have a threaded barrel from what I've seen, but they include standard height sights. I wish that they would give us suppressor height sights, especially with a cut for an optic, just in case, like, say your optic goes down, God forbid. On my 509, it comes with suppressor height sights, so I can see through the optic just in case something happens. Say the emitter gets blocked with mud or something like that, or water, or you name it. I can still use my iron sights through this handgun. If I were to run a Delta Point or anything like that, I would not be able to use these sights. So I wish that they would include, for handgun purposes, suppressor height sights. But for the Raider, it works just fine because you can't run a suppressor height rear sight with the Flux Raider. So this works perfect for my use for the handgun. Now, moving on to the barrel, we said we're running the Sig 5.5-inch barrel. One thing that I really don't like, and I asked Sig about it, is their barrels are intentionally long. If you can see, the barrel sticks out, I don't know, maybe about 1/2 inch or so from the edge of the slider, from the end of the slide here. So I asked Sig about that, and they said they ended up having to extend the length for some reliability. Maybe they were seeing some reliability issues or anything like that, suppressed or something like that, but they just said they needed to make that change. Again, you're getting a little bit extra ballistics. I know velocity is kind of key when you're looking at terminal ballistics for handguns. So the nice thing is you are getting some extra velocity, however much that maybe 1/2 inch will give you. However, it just doesn't look as clean in my opinion. I wish they could have cleaned that up and kind of kept it a little bit more flush with the end of the slide. I know some companies make compensators for the 320 and the Sig barrels that essentially the threading to thread the compensator on is countersunk into the compensator, so it has material to kind of flush up against the slide for this specific purpose. But anyways, that is kind of just the overall just first impressions on this. We're going to get it out, we're going to shoot it, we're going to put it through its paces. We are going to shoot it suppressed, see how it works, how it functions, just like we said, as a dedicated handgun. But out of the gate, this sucker is this is a bigger gun. This is a full combat style, full-sized handgun. So it feels big, it kind of feels cumbersome. Like I said, the grip is a little bit big for me, even though it's a medium. So It feels like a chunk, to be honest with you. But I'm looking forward to seeing how it functions, and I hope that it works well. You know, I kind of gave a little disclaimer in the beginning of the video, but in my life, I've had a lot of SIG products. I've had an MCX, I've shot a ton of MPXs, I've had multiple 365s, I shot a couple of crosses, I have a 238, I'm sure there's some stuff that I missed. I had a Mark 25 in the past, that was a great handgun, but to be honest with you, out of the majority of the SIG products that I've had, I have had to some degree one or more issues with the product. So to be honest with you, SIG is one of my favorite companies, bar none, in terms of making like next generation weapons and really forward thinking designs for their firearms. However, I have seen some issues with some of their firearms in terms of reliability, and I buy a ton more guns than the average person does, so I have a little bit larger sample size than most to kind of vet out any issues, or maybe say I have multiple of one gun. I just don't necessarily have a sample size of one in a lot of cases, but unfortunately with SIG, I haven't had the best luck. However, like we said, I really do like the forward thinking and modularity of their firearms that they design. So I'll do probably a separate video and kind of why I moved away from SIG in the future if you're interested. But again, like we said, just like with their other handguns and other firearms, like especially the MCX, I really do like the modularity. I love that the trigger and the fire control unit is serialized, so you can change it all together, or change everything up, you know, different slides, different grips, kind of change it on the fly. A quick comment on that is I really do like the ability to do that. However, if you think about it, say you want a full-size handgun and say you want like more of a compact handgun and you are swapping your grip module, right? Or not your grip module, your fire control unit. So if you think about it, the fire control unit may be around the $300 range depending on where you can find it. But, and this is for the nice one, but if you think about it, you know, you have to buy a whole new slide, which is $300, $400, depending on which one you get, a new barrel that matches the slide, maybe you want a new grip module, etc., stuff like that. If you really do think about it, you've almost built a whole new handgun minus the fire control unit if you're swapping this fire control unit into like different size slides and grips. So I really do like the modularity of it. However, once you start getting all the components for the next handgun that you want to swap everything into, in my personal opinion, it would just be worth just buying another fire control unit. I mean, it would save you time swapping everything out. I mean, you could just pick up what you need, etc., and not have to worry about it. But again, like I said, your mileage may vary. You might like swapping fire control, but essentially, like I said, you've essentially bought everything you need for a second or third or fourth handgun, just minus the fire control. So what is it to put a couple $100 and get a fire control and just leave it complete, not have to finagle with it? But anyways, out of the gate, pretty positive, some gripes, but I'm really looking forward to seeing how this thing performs on the range, how it performs suppressed. We're gonna use the Wolf 9 SD. We may throw the delta point on it from the Raider, and again, I'm really excited to see how it works. If you like what you see, make sure to leave us a sub, make sure to leave us a comment, thumbs up, again, if you like it. We have a good bit of videos coming down the pipeline, good accessory videos, comparisons, testings, etc., stuff like that. So I'm really looking forward to getting all that stuff out. Make sure to tell your friends, make sure to tell your family, tell your dog I said hi. We'll see you in the next one.